I thank God all the time for all the people that have been part of my life and career that have helped me get here and maintain this all this time. And thank you.
At 66, Alan Jackson is finally opening up about something fans have long suspected but never fully confirmed. For years, we've admired his timeless voice and powerful presence in country music, but behind the scenes, there's been a question lingering. What's really going on in his personal life? After decades of speculation, Jackson has now addressed it in a way that has left fans speechless. Stay tuned for the shocking revelation that confirms what we all wondered about the legend. Alan Jackson's rise to country music stardom didn't happen overnight. He was born on October 17, 1958, in Newnan, Georgia, and grew up in a modest, working-class family. Alan was the youngest of 5 children, and although they didn't have much money, his family instilled in him the values of hard work, faith, and perseverance. His father, Joseph, was a mechanic, while his mother, Ruth, worked as a school dietitian. Despite the simple lifestyle, Alan was surrounded by love and support, which helped shape him into the person he would become. From a young age, Alan was drawn to music. He wasn't just listening to country radio like many of his peers. Instead, he loved the music he heard live in local performances, especially in the small towns around Georgia. His parents, while not musicians themselves, encouraged Alan's interest, and he started to play the guitar during his teenage years. He even formed a local rock band, but it didn't take long for him to discover his true love for country music. Influenced by legends like Hank Williams, George Jones, and Merle Haggard, Alan began to focus on the country sound, blending it with his own style. His love for country music was strong, but Alan wasn't always sure how he would break into the industry. He met Denise, his future wife, when they were both teenagers. The two started dating, and despite the ups and downs, their relationship remained strong. After high school, Alan and Denise moved to Nashville in hopes of finding success. Alan didn't come from wealth or connections, so their life was tough in the early days. They both had jobs to support themselves. Alan worked in a mailroom, and Denise worked as a flight attendant. Money was tight, but Alan never gave up on his dream of becoming a country music star. One day, while at the airport, Denise spotted Glen Campbell, a famous country singer. Without hesitation, she approached him and told him about Alan's music. Impressed by her confidence, Glen handed her his business card, opening a door for Alan. This moment proved to be a pivotal turning point in his career. Not long after, Alan was offered a deal with Arista Records. His debut album, Here in the Real World, was released in 1990 and quickly became a huge hit. The album sold over 2 million copies and included the title track, which would go on to become one of his signature songs. It wasn't just the music that captured people's attention. It was Alan's down-to-earth personality and his genuine love for the country genre. The success of Here in the Real World marked the beginning of a long and successful career. Alan brought a fresh, traditional sound back to country music during a time when the genre was being influenced by pop trends. His authenticity, coupled with his commitment to the craft, helped him build a fan base that would follow him for decades. And as he rose to fame, Alan never forgot where he came from. He remained true to his roots, always remembering the hardworking family that had supported him through it all. His story, from small-town boy to country music icon, is a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and staying true to yourself. Alan Jackson's journey through life has been anything but easy, and although the world saw the success and the fame, behind closed doors there were personal struggles that shaped him into the man he is today. At the core of his life has always been family. Alan's childhood, his marriage, and his role as a father are the foundation upon which everything else in his life has been built. While his career has soared, there were times when the weight of his personal struggles made the spotlight feel more like a heavy burden than a shining reward. Born and raised in Newnan, Georgia, Alan was part of a close-knit family. His parents, Joseph and Ruth, gave him a solid foundation in values like hard work, humility, and faith. His father was a mechanic, and his mother worked as a school dietitian. While the family wasn't wealthy, they were rich in love and support. And that's what Alan carried with him throughout his life. Being the youngest of 5 children, Alan quickly learned the importance of working together and supporting each other, a lesson that would stay with him through his adult years. As he ventured into adulthood, Alan's life took a significant turn when he met Denise, his future wife. They started dating when they were teenagers, but it wasn't exactly a smooth journey. Denise wasn't immediately drawn to him, and Alan had to be patient and persistent. After years of chasing her, she finally gave in, and their love story began. It wasn't long before they were married in 1979, just a couple of young dreamers with big aspiration. Alan and Denise decided to leave their small-town life behind and chase their dreams in Nashville. They didn't have much when they arrived. Alan worked in a mailroom and Denise was a flight attendant. They were doing everything they could to get by, and Alan even sold his car to help buy their first house. They were driven by one common goal: for Alan to make it as a country singer. Their journey was far from glamorous, but they had each other, and that kept them going. In 1990, after years of hard work and sacrifice, Alan's big break finally came. His debut album, Here in the Real World, was a massive success, selling over 2 million copies and putting him on the map as one of the biggest new stars in country music. With this success came a new life, money, fame, and the ability to live in a beautiful home. But while his career was flourishing, there was a storm brewing in his personal life. As Alan's career grew, so did the pressure. Being in the spotlight took a toll on his marriage to Denise. As they both tried to adjust to the pressures of fame, their relationship became strained. Alan's busy touring schedule and the time away from home were hard on Denise. She had imagined a glamorous life on the road with her husband, but the reality was different. She felt lonely and disconnected. The strain eventually led to infidelity rumors, and in 1997, Alan and Denise separated. It was a devastating blow, not just for their marriage, but for their family. For Denise, the separation was a deep emotional struggle. She had to deal with heartbreak while also raising their 3 daughters on her own. But during this difficult time, something remarkable happened. Denise experienced a spiritual awakening, which ultimately changed everything for her. She found the strength to forgive Alan, even after all the pain he had caused her. They spent about 4 months apart, healing in their own ways. But eventually they decided to give their marriage another chance. Their reunion wasn't just a fresh start. It was a new chapter in their relationship. Just when they thought they were on solid ground again, life threw them another curveball. While celebrating their anniversary in Florida, Denise was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. It was a shock to both of them. Denise had always been healthy, and to receive such devastating news was more than they could have imagined. Alan was there every step of the way, supporting her through the radiation and chemotherapy treatments. The emotional weight of it all was overwhelming, and Alan turned to his music to help him process his emotions. It was during this time that he wrote the song When I Saw You Leaving. The song poured out of him, and when Denise heard it, she broke down in tears. It was a powerful moment in their lives, and a reminder of the depth of their connection. Thankfully, Denise fought through the cancer and emerged victorious. But the journey left its mark on both of them. It strengthened their bond and gave them a new perspective on life. The years that followed were marked by more challenges, but through it all, Alan and Denise stood together. They had always been a team, and their love only grew stronger with time. Alan's struggles didn't end there. In 2000, he experienced the loss of his father Eugene, which deeply affected him. His father's passing was a reminder of the fleeting nature of life, and Alan poured his grief into his music. The song Drive for Daddy Gene became a tribute to his father, capturing the small, meaningful moments they had shared. It was a song about memories, love, and the simple joys of life. And while he dealt with the loss of his father, Alan also found comfort in his family, particularly in his 3 daughters and his growing family. The next chapter in his life included new challenges and new beginnings, but his foundation remained his family. But the struggles continued. In 2017, Alan faced another tragedy when his mother, Ruth, passed away. Ruth had been the heart of the Jackson family, and her loss was felt deeply. To cope with her death, Alan wrote Where Her Heart Has Always Been, a song that included a recording of his mother reading a Bible passage. It was a deeply personal tribute to the woman who had supported him through everything. Ruth's death left a void in Alan's life that was hard to fill. But as with all the other tragedies in his life, Alan turned to his music to help him heal. The year after his mother's passing, Alan's family was hit by yet another tragedy. His son-in-law, Ben Seligman, tragically died in a fall while on a boat dock in Florida. Ben had been married to Alan's daughter, Maddie, and had been a beloved member of the family. His death was a painful blow to everyone, and once again, Alan had to rely on his family to get through the heartache. Through all these personal struggles, Alan Jackson has shown remarkable resilience. Despite the tragedies, the heartache, and the difficult times, Alan has continued to find strength in his family, his faith, and his music. His personal life has been marked by loss, but it has also been filled with love, redemption, and the unwavering support of those who matter most to him. As a man who has been through so much, Alan Jackson's story is one of perseverance, love, and the importance of family in overcoming life's challenges. Alan Jackson's career has always been deeply intertwined with the evolution of country music, and he's never shied away from making his opinions known about the direction the genre has taken. For someone who's been at the heart of country music for decades, he's seen firsthand how the landscape has changed, sometimes in ways that he's embraced, and sometimes in ways that have left him frustrated. One of the most notable moments of this shift came in the 1990s and early 2000s, when country music began to move away from its traditional roots, embracing a more polished, pop-infused sound. For Alan Jackson, this wasn't just a change in the music, it was a challenge to the very essence of what country music was supposed to represent. In the late 80s and early 90s, country music was in a state of transition. The genre was beginning to move away from the honky-tonk and traditional sounds of its past, influenced heavily by pop, rock, and even elements of urban music. Artists like Garth Brooks, Shania Twain, and others were pushing the boundaries of what country could sound like, blending it with massive production, synthesizers, and even pop beats. This brought country music into the mainstream like never before, but it also led to a growing divide between what some artists considered authentic country and what others saw as a more commercialized version of the genre. Alan Jackson, always known for his respect for traditional country music, found himself caught in the middle of this shift. His deep love for the sounds of Hank Williams, George Jones, and other country legends shaped his approach to music. Jackson was never one to chase trends. Instead, he focused on staying true to the sound that he loved, the sound that had shaped him and his career. He wasn't against change in country music. He just believed that there was a way to evolve without losing the heart and soul of the genre. The turning point came when Alan Jackson, along with George Strait, released the song Murder on Music Row. The song was a bold declaration of their feelings about the direction country music was headed. It wasn't just a commentary on the state of the industry, it was a protest. In the song, Jackson and Strait sing about how they killed country music, blaming the mainstream country music establishment for turning the genre into something it wasn't. The song's lyrics speak to the frustrations of artists like Jackson, who felt that the soul of country music, the raw, honest, simple sounds that had defined the genre for decades, was being overshadowed by the glitzy, pop-infused style that had taken over. Murder on Music Row wasn't a typical country song. There were no catchy hooks, no big production numbers. It was raw and to the point. And while it wasn't released as a single, the song still became one of the most talked about tracks in country music at the time. The media picked up on it, and the song resonated with country fans who felt the same way. It was as if Jackson and Strait had spoken for a whole generation of listeners and artists who felt that their beloved genre was being hijacked. For Jackson, this song was a statement. It was his way of saying that country music had lost its way and that it was time to reclaim its roots. The release of Murder on Music Row made it clear that Jackson wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. He was ready to stand up for the kind of country music that had shaped his career, even if it meant going against the grain of what was popular at the time. But this wasn't the first time Alan Jackson had spoken out about the state of country music. Throughout his career, he's made it clear that he doesn't believe in just following trends for the sake of success. He's always been about authenticity, and his music reflects that. In fact, one of the defining features of Jackson's work has always been his ability to stay true to his roots while still finding ways to evolve as an artist. His ability to blend traditional sounds with new influences made him a force in the industry, but it also made him a rebel in the eyes of many in Nashville. As the 90s wore on, country music continued to shift. The rise of pop country artists became undeniable, and Jackson's traditional approach started to feel increasingly out of place in a world where country music was increasingly being produced like pop music. For some artists, this was an exciting change. But for Jackson, it was a slow-burning frustration. He believed that the heart of country music was in its storytelling, its simplicity, and its honesty, all of which felt increasingly absent in the overly polished, commercialized tracks that were beginning to dominate the charts. Even though Jackson was seen by many as a traditionalist, he never stopped evolving. His music wasn't just about holding on to the past. It was about finding a way to respect the traditions of country while also adapting to the times. But he always remained true to his roots, and his refusal to fully embrace the pop country wave kept him at odds with some of the newer stars of the genre. That tension between tradition and modernity became a defining part of Jackson's career. In the early 2000s, Jackson released Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. The song, written in the aftermath of the tragedy, wasn't just about the events of that day. It was about how country music had the ability to bring people together in moments of grief and uncertainty. The song became a massive hit, and for many, it represented everything that was good and true about country music. It was a reminder that country music had always been about connection, about telling stories that spoke to people's hearts, and in that moment, it seemed like Jackson's brand of country music had never been more relevant. But as time went on, the divide between traditional country and the newer, pop-infused sound of the genre continued to grow. While Jackson never stopped recording and performing, he became more and more vocal about his frustration with the changes in country music. And though he had become a legend in his own right, it was clear that the world of country music had become a different place than the one he had known. Alan Jackson's rebellion against the mainstream country music machine wasn't about being a contrarian for the sake of it. It was about maintaining the integrity of a genre that had meant so much to him. He didn't want country music to lose its heart, its authenticity. He wanted it to evolve, yes, but he wanted that evolution to come from a place of respect for the genre's roots. And while his efforts to stand up for traditional country music were met with mixed reactions, there's no denying that Alan Jackson played a pivotal role in reminding the world what country music was all about. In the end, Alan Jackson's rebellion against the changing face of country music wasn't just about one song or one statement. It was a career-long commitment to staying true to his roots while also challenging the status quo. He wasn't afraid to speak up for what he believed in, even when it meant going against the tide. And while the world of country music may have changed, Alan Jackson remains a true icon of the genre, a man who never lost sight of what made country music great in the first place. Alan Jackson's final tour marked a deeply emotional chapter in the legendary country music star's life and career. For decades, Jackson's unmistakable voice and simple, heartfelt style had made him a favorite among fans. His music, filled with both joy and sorrow, had chronicled the human experience in a way that few other artists could. But as his health began to decline due to a debilitating diagnosis, Jackson made the brave decision to face the reality of his condition and announced that his final tour would be his last. The news was difficult for many fans to hear. For more than 30 years, Alan Jackson had been a staple of country music. His songs, such as Chattahoochee, Drive, For Daddy Gene, and Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning, had touched hearts and shaped the landscape of country music. To think that the man who had given so much to the genre was nearing the end of his touring days was a hard pill to swallow. But Alan Jackson, in true form, didn't shy away from the challenges he faced. He met the reality of his diagnosis head-on, and in doing so, he allowed his fans to share in his journey. The story of Alan Jackson's final tour didn't start with the announcement that it would be his last. It began long before, with a period of silence from Jackson and his family. For years, Jackson had been experiencing symptoms of a rare and progressive neurological disease known as Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, CMT. CMT is a hereditary disorder that affects the peripheral nerves, leading to muscle weakness, balance issues, and loss of sensation in the limbs. Although not life-threatening, the disease can severely impact mobility and physical ability. The symptoms started affecting Jackson's ability to perform on stage, something that had been a central part of his life for so long. At first, Jackson tried to keep the diagnosis private. He continued performing, albeit with increasing difficulty. His fans noticed that something was different. Jackson, once known for his lively performances and energetic stage presence, seemed to be struggling. His usual confidence on stage was sometimes replaced by moments of hesitation and uncertainty. Fans began to speculate. Was he sick? Was something wrong? Jackson's loyal followers could sense that something was amiss, but no one knew exactly what it was. In 2021, Jackson finally decided it was time to speak out. During an interview with Jenna Bush Hager on The Today Show, he revealed that he had been living with CMT for over a decade. The disease, which was slowly affecting his ability to walk and perform, was something he had kept to himself for years. Jackson explained that he didn't want people to feel sorry for him, and he certainly didn't want to be seen as someone who was letting his health struggles define him. But the time had come for him to be open about it, especially since the disease was beginning to impact his stage performances. The announcement was a shock to many, but it also offered a sense of clarity. Fans who had been wondering about the changes in his performances now understood the source of his struggles. Jackson's decision to share his diagnosis wasn't just about explaining his physical limitations. It was about being honest with his fans, who had supported him throughout his entire career. His vulnerability in the face of a difficult truth endeared him even more to his audience. Jackson didn't let the disease take away his love for music, but he knew it was time to face the reality of his situation. His final tour, which began in 2021 and continued into 2022, was called Last Call, One More for the Road. It wasn't just a tour, it was a celebration of everything Jackson had achieved. A way for him to give back to his fans one last time. Jackson poured everything he had into every performance, making sure that his final shows were filled with the same passion and heart that had characterized his entire career. What made the Last Call tour so special wasn't just the music, it was the sense of closure, both for Jackson and for his fans. For years, Jackson had been a fixture in the country music scene, and to see him acknowledging the end of his touring career was emotional for many. The concerts were filled with raw emotion, with Jackson performing his iconic hits while also giving fans a chance to say goodbye. He didn't hold back. There were moments of laughter, moments of reflection, and moments of tears. Fans could feel the weight of what Jackson was experiencing, and they stood by him, showing their unwavering support. The final leg of the tour was bittersweet. In October 2022, Jackson had to postpone his last 2 shows due to his health. The news was met with an outpouring of understanding from fans, who had seen firsthand the toll that CMT had taken on his body. Jackson, ever the professional, hated disappointing his fans, but he knew his health had to come first. While many were disappointed, they also appreciated the honesty with which Jackson had approached the situation.